He's the sort of man who just keeps showing up. Day after day, Tom Selleck was there. You probably never bothered to think about what it cost him. Not really. Guys like that learn how to show up so well, the price disappears behind routine. Tom Selleck actually defines that kind of presence. For 50 years, he's been everywhere in American entertainment. There's the mustache, the easy smile, the red Ferrari, Frank Reagan's calm stare presiding over Sunday dinners on TV. He's been such a fixture in our homes, so regular and reliable, that most of us never gave a thought to what was going on inside, behind that steady face. But, honestly, there's a lot most people don't know. He lost out on James Bond before Magnum was even a thing. Indiana Jones slipped through his fingers when Spielberg and Lucas both wanted him, but circumstances boxed him out. 14 years he gave to a franchise. It continued without him. No call, no goodbye, not even a footnote. And he never called any of that the worst thing that happened to him. Because, long before, something else hurt him more. Now, at 81, out on 60 acres in California, away from the bright lights, out of view, he still wakes up before the sun, still out there fixing fences, still planting trees, even though he might not live to see them grow strong. Don't mistake that for sadness. That's faith, plain and simple. There's a cost to that kind of faith, and today, let's dig into what it meant for him. Let's rewind all the way back, January 29th, 1945, Detroit, Michigan. World War II in Europe was still raging, but in America, there was a strange tension, hope mixed with exhaustion, everyone waiting for the soldiers to come home, and whatever the future held next. Into this moment, Robert and Martha Selleck welcomed their son, Thomas William Selleck. The family moved west early, headed to Sherman Oaks in California's San Fernando Valley. Their house always smelled like fresh-cut grass and possibility. It was classic post-war California, optimistic, spreading out beneath wide sunlight, almost as if the land itself wanted to be a symbol for a new beginning. Tom's dad worked in real estate, a serious type who believed sweat leads to success, and only results matter. Martha, his mom, balanced warmth and discipline. Together, they raised 4 kids in a home where achievements were expected, but excuses, they got picked apart before they'd ever be accepted. Tom was always the tallest, always stood out. At Grant High, he towered over his classmates, and coaches noticed his presence even before knowing the kind of player he was. Baseball, basketball. He played both, with a focus that made his effort look easy, even when it wasn't. But basketball was the thing, not just a pipe dream or some childhood fantasy. He wanted to go pro. He wanted it badly, the sort of want that makes young men believe they can bend reality through pure willpower. USC came calling with a scholarship. Tom showed up on campus with quiet confidence, the kind you only earn from being good at something for years. He fit right in. He felt like he belonged. He got 7 games with the Trojans. Across those games, he scored 4 points. 4. Imagine what that does to a kid who built his identity around this sport, who thought greatness in high school could scale up forever. Coaches weren't cruel. The university wasn't harsh. But elite college competition cut away illusions fast. It showed him, crystal clear, just how wide the gap was between being the star at Grant High and being exceptional where exceptional is just minimum. 4 points. Then he walked away from basketball. You should really pay attention here. This is the moment that made him, more than anything else. Tom Selleck didn't fall apart, didn't get bitter, didn't blame the game or himself. He did what men of a certain mold do. He found the next real thing. He moved toward it with the same quiet seriousness, the same intensity. That next thing was theater. It appeared almost by accident, like most real callings. A modeling class? A casual suggestion from someone who saw how he carried himself. Someone noticed that he just seemed present in a way people couldn't explain. He began studying acting, and everyone who had only seen him as an athlete was caught off guard by how seriously he took it. Turns out, he had a knack for stillness, for that controlled restraint that marks a real actor. The camera recognized something in him immediately, as if it knew what was hiding inside. But recognition's only part of it. Opportunity, success, they don't always follow right away. Between his first auditions and the first real gig, those years were long, honest, and pretty rough. He graduated from USC and took whatever jobs he could get: commercials, bit parts, minor TV appearances, a slow, steady stack of tiny credits that didn't guarantee anything. Early 70s TV was all about episodic work, forgettable roles. Tom Selleck kept plugging away, doing jobs that never promised they'd add up to more. Meanwhile, there was something else, something Hollywood doesn't talk about, because it doesn't fit the narrative, doesn't glitter for the cameras. From 1967 to 1973, Tom Selleck served in the California Army National Guard. He was 22. That time mattered. The Vietnam War wasn't distant background noise. It pressed on everything. Young men of Tom's generation carried the possibility of the draft like a heartbeat, always present, impossible to ignore. He served his 6 years. He never made a big deal out of it, never spun it into personal mythology. He served, came home, and got back to building his life. He carried it inward, not in stories, but in the sober attitude that showed up in everything he did afterward. He got married in 1971. Jacqueline Ray, an actress herself, someone who understood what it means to love a person still becoming what they're meant to be. She stood by him through failed auditions, through phone calls that never came, through nights when silence weighed heavy. She believed in him without any proof, just faith. Faith he never fully understood until much later. Tom would say she was essential. Her faith during the quiet years was a grace he could only appreciate in hindsight. Then something changed. Something finally shifted. Back in 1976, Tom Selleck snagged a recurring role on The Young and the Restless. The part wasn't huge, but you noticed him. Then a TV movie came along. And after that, for one brief, strange moment, everything almost flipped. He got offered James Bond. The producers wanted him. The job was basically his, but he'd already committed to something else, and he couldn't back out. Someone else got to be Bond. Tom watched from the sidelines and returned to his regular gigs. Then in 1980, his phone rang, and this time it felt different. CBS was launching a new show set in Hawaii. They wanted Tom for the lead. Magnum, P.I., Thomas Sullivan Magnum, Vietnam vet, private investigator, living in luxury on a writer's estate, zipping around in a red Ferrari, solving mysteries with a kind of warmth and sly humor you hadn't really seen on American TV before. He was smart, funny, honest, and real. Not soft, just human. This was it, the role. Everything he'd been working toward led right here. Tom didn't hesitate. Of course he said yes. What he couldn't know in that moment, what nobody tells you, is when fame shows up, it never comes by itself. It drags along a whole new gravitational pull, rearranging your life. Sometimes the parts you most want to stay the same. Magnum, P.I. hit the air on December 11th, 1980. It didn't slowly catch on. It exploded. 60 million people tuned in. The mustache was instantly iconic. So was the Ferrari. Thomas Magnum became one of the most beloved TV characters, practically overnight. And inside all that chaos, Tom Selleck himself quietly started to disappear. His marriage to Jacqueline Ray fell apart during those first wild years. Tom never made a spectacle of it. He's just always been the kind of person who thinks a marriage belongs to the people in it, not the world outside. But after years of interviews and honest answers, the truth is pretty clear. Fame crashed into his life too fast. There was no room for normal. Suddenly, the guy Jackie married, the one who struggled and came home every night and tried again, got replaced by someone the world wanted. Someone bigger, farther away, impossible to reach. They divorced in 1982. Tom has called it, without drama or self-pity, the worst thing that's ever happened to him. Read that again. The worst thing, not the basketball career that ended before it began. Not 6 years in the National Guard during a turbulent era. Not the endless auditions, the tiny roles, the near misses. Not losing James Bond. Not having Indiana Jones slip away. Not the arthritis that later forced him to use a stuntman just to step out of a car. Not even being left behind when Magnum ended. Out of all that, the worst thing for Tom Selleck was the divorce. That tells you exactly who he is, behind the mustache and the car, and the 60 million households, the private life was always what mattered. Being known and loved by someone at home, not by strangers. Being irreplaceable to one person, not iconic to millions. He lost something else in the divorce, too. A bond with Kevin, Jacqueline's son. Tom had helped raise him through all those years, when work barely trickled in, and no one recognized his name. But step-family ties are fragile when life gets torn up. Kevin went his own way. Tom went wherever the show pulled him. The relationship faded, predictably, quietly. He carried that loss alone. Magnum P.I. ran 8 seasons, 162 episodes. Tom gave Magnum something the scripts didn't call for but deeply needed, a real, everyday warmth. He never played a cardboard hero. He played a man. That's why the show worked so well. He won an Emmy in 1984. All the magazine covers, the Golden Globe nods came too. And through it all, he stayed gracious, thoughtful, and just a little out of reach. Like part of him always preferred to stay behind the scenes, watching, private. Then along came Indiana Jones. Spielberg wanted him. Lucas wanted him. Everyone knew it was the role of a lifetime. Heck, even Harrison Ford has said it was Tom's part first. But he couldn't take it. His Magnum contract was ironclad. He watched Ford step into the fedora. He went right back to Hawaii, shot another season, and never once complained about it in public. Later, he just said he believed in keeping his word. A contract means something, that's all. That's how Tom Selleck sees regret. He looks at what he lost, names it, and moves forward. The pain is real, but he doesn't live in it. Life goes where his commitments take him. Then, in 1987, Gilly Mack entered his story. She was a British actress and dancer, the kind of woman who didn't care about Tom's fame. She liked the man himself. They married that August, quietly, without the celebrity circus. Today, they're still together, nearly 40 years on, in a world where long Hollywood marriages seem either suspect or unreal, depending on your level of cynicism. Hannah was born in December 1988, and eventually, she became a professional equestrian. She's not winning because her dad's famous. She earned every bit of her success through pure discipline. You see it in the way she carries herself. The kind of focus that usually comes from watching someone quietly excel, like Tom Selleck, right in front of you as you grow up. Tom always talks about Hannah with a kind of reverence. Even if his words are measured, you can feel it. He doesn't really gush, but the pride slips through anyway. The family settled on a ranch in Hidden Valley near Thousand Oaks. 60 acres, once Dean Martin's land, now Tom's. He didn't buy it as some Hollywood trophy. No. He turned it into a working ranch, rolling up his sleeves for the real stuff. Tending to soil, mending fences, caring for avocado trees. The kind of work that doesn't care about cameras or showbiz chaos. He planted crops, fixed things with his own hands, worked the land at dawn before anyone could bother him about scripts or ratings. Over time, that ranch became the truest part of his life. A world that had nothing to do with the uncertainty of television. It had nothing to do with the whims of other people, and everything to do with what he could build himself. Through the 90s, his TV career kept humming along. He always knew who he was, and his choices showed it. Critics sometimes called him limited, but fans called him reliable. Then in 2005, the Jesse Stone movies started. 8 films based on Robert B. Parker's books. Jesse Stone wasn't some slick Magnum clone. He was a small-town sheriff struggling with his own demons, showing up day after day, no matter how broken he felt. Tom poured himself into that role, deeper than any action hero part ever asked him to. Jesse Stone was grief that got up every morning, a man hanging on, just doing his job, deciding to keep standing even when it's hard. It's easy to see why Tom connected with him and why he kept coming back for nearly 20 years. And Blue Bloods arrived. The show launched on CBS in 2010, with Tom as Frank Reagan, the NYPD commissioner and the backbone of a family filled with cops. Frank wasn't respected because he barked orders. He earned it by sticking to principles and saying what needed to be said. Always the calmest guy at the table. For Tom, Frank Reagan felt like the role he'd been working toward all along. All that restraint, subtlety, presence, it all came into play. Those Sunday dinners on the show became iconic. People connected with Frank's old-school authority, mixed with real moral seriousness. Maybe viewers were hungry for a kind of fatherhood that didn't gloss over how hard it can actually be. 14 seasons, nearly 300 episodes, one of CBS's longest-running dramas, and Tom became the most-watched actor on network TV through all those years. Then, in 2024, it was over. The cancellation surprised no one. 14 seasons is an eternity for a drama. But what followed stung. A spin-off was announced, with the universe carrying on and some cast members sticking around, but not Tom. For reasons no one bothered to explain, he wasn't invited back. The guy who kept the show centered for 14 years, gone just like that. The network made their call and moved on. Tom, 80 years old, watched it all happen. He didn't make a big deal of it publicly, never has, never will. To reporters, he just said he understood the business, had no bitterness, wished everyone well. Maybe he meant all that. Maybe pain and honesty can share a sentence. Sometimes loss is real, even if you don't talk about it. Meanwhile, his body kept its silent scorecard. Arthritis had crept in over the years, a reminder from decades of action scenes, horseback rides, ranch work, and physically demanding days. By the last seasons of Blue Bloods, set insiders described him as a man who hurt all the time. He prepped for scenes with the kind of care that comes from knowing it's one thing you can still control. Movements that used to be natural needed help, not because he'd stopped wanting it, but because his body finally called in the debt. He needed a stunt double just to get out of a car. That image isn't easy to pin down. Yes, it's sad, but it's also brave, showing up when it costs you something. It's honest about what aging really looks like. Not a slow fade, but the gap between what you used to do and what your body lets you do now. Right out in the open, cameras rolling. Tom Selleck never froze in place. He kept sitting at those Sunday dinner tables, playing Frank Reagan, holding the room with the same presence he always had, even as his body negotiated its own deals under the suit. 50 years playing men who never broke. The body always gets the final word, but Tom made it wait until the work was done. Now talk is swirling about Jesse Stone again. Tom's been meeting with Taylor Sheridan, the guy behind the modern Western boom, who knows how to write older characters whose age isn't a weakness but their whole point. Tom isn't chasing relevance, he just believes he's still got work in him, and letting that go unused feels like a different kind of loss. He has said, "I want to work as long as they'll have me." Hear that sentence slowly. The way he would say it, without urgency, without performance, without the faint desperation that clings to public statements from men who are actually afraid. It is not a plea. It is a declaration of intention from a man who has always understood that the work was the point, that the actual, disciplined labor of inhabiting a character fully and honestly was the thing that organized everything else around it. That stopping the work, not the fame, not the recognition, but the work itself, would be its own kind of diminishment. He is not afraid of aging, he is afraid of stopping. That distinction matters enormously. And it is the distinction that separates Tom Selleck from the version of celebrity aging Hollywood tends to produce. The desperate maintenance of an image, the resistance to time as though time were an opponent rather than simply the medium through which a life moves. He let the mustache go gray, he let the face record what the years have written on it. He let the body negotiate its own terms with the work, quietly, without making the negotiation the story. There is a ranch in Hidden Valley, California, where the mornings arrive before the rest of the world remembers to look. The light comes in low and unhurried across 60 acres of working land. Across the avocado trees Tom Selleck planted with his own hands, across the fences he has repaired season after season. Not because a man of his means cannot hire someone to repair them, but because the act of repair, of showing up to something broken and making it whole again, is the thing itself. It is not a metaphor for him. It is simply what the morning requires. And he has always been a man who does what the morning requires. He is 81 years old. He wakes before dawn and moves carefully through the body he has earned. The body that carries the record of every physical demand 5 decades of work placed upon it. The body that continues, despite the arthritis, despite the accumulated damage, despite the gap between what it once did without thought and what it now requires deliberate effort to accomplish. He does not complain about this in public. He was formed in a time and a tradition that treated the private endurance of difficulty as a form of basic dignity, and he has never once stopped practicing that dignity. Jilly is there. She has been there for 39 years, which in the arithmetic of Hollywood marriages is not simply an achievement, but a quiet revolution. She did not need him to be magnum to love him. She did not need the Emmy or the ratings, or the magazine covers, or the Sunday dinner table. She chose, repeatedly, across decades, the man behind all of that, the one who gets up before dawn and works the soil, and comes in with dirt on his hands, and does not perform gratitude, but simply lives inside it. That is the marriage. That is what survived when the career went through its seasons of abundance and its seasons of loss. And Hannah is there too, present in the way adult children are present, carrying forward something of what her father built without being required to replicate it. She chose horses and competition and the discipline of excellence in a field where his name opens no particular doors. She earned what she has with the focused seriousness that is unmistakably, beautifully inherited. Tom Selleck watches her compete and understands, in the way parents understand things that exceed language, that the most important thing he ever produced did not air on CBS. He was not given an easy passage. The basketball dream closed at 4 points in 7 games. The first marriage could not survive what fame did to the air around it. A stepson drifted. Indiana Jones went to someone else. James Bond went to someone else before that. The franchise he anchored for 14 years continued without him. The body that carried him through 5 decades of physical performance now requires negotiation for movements it once completed without a thought. He endured all of it without making any of it a public grievance. He endured all of it and planted avocado trees and repaired fences and read scripts and said yes to the work when the work was worth saying yes to. And no one ever quite asked what it cost him to stay standing. Because he was so profoundly, reliably good at staying standing that the cost was real. But the cost was real. The cost is always real. And perhaps that is what 81 looks like when you have lived it honestly. Not the absence of damage, but the presence of something that outlasted the damage. The ranch. The daughter who competes with her father's seriousness in a field entirely her own. The work that is still, quietly, in conversation. He planted trees he will not always be around to harvest. That is not sadness. That is faith. And faith at 81 on 60 acres in Hidden Valley looks exactly like a man who is still, quietly, showing up. If this story moved something in you, if Tom Selleck's 50 years of quiet endurance, of losses carried without complaint, of mornings begun before the world was watching, stayed with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a like if you believe the people who stay standing deserve to be witnessed, not just admired. And subscribe, because the stories that matter most are rarely the ones easiest to tell. We'll see you in the next one.